And now home is maybe defined slightly differently. Is home then where you spend the most time? If so, then for some of you, work is your home. Or the local bar is your home. Or this local sports facility, or the local Starbucks or Caldi's is home. So is that home for you? Or is it the place where you sleep at night? Is that home? I like Jesus' description in the Bible. He says, foxes have holes, birds have nests, but the Son of Man has no other place to head. He was saying, hey, I'm kind of a wanderer. And Jesus, although he had a home in Nazareth where his parents were from, he now, in his adult life, said, I really don't have a place to lay my head. I don't have a place where I sleep at night. Each night is kind of a different spot. And then for a while, he'd stay one place or another. What's home? As you go through life, that kind of changes, and your definitions of home might change. As you grow in life, there might come a point in time in which you long for a home that is nowhere here on this earth. If you know Jesus, some of you kind of count this promise where Jesus says, you know what, I'm going to prepare a place for you, and in my Father's house are many rooms, and that's kind of where you're going to be with me. And so we start looking for this place. I went to a memorial service on Friday, and the man, our Seminary Pastor Howard, another one of our teaching pastors, his father-in-law passed away. And he was telling a story about how this man, as he got a little bit older, the last few months he's been failing over a period of time, and he'd been in and out of the hospital, in and out of some different homes. And he developed pneumonia, and they were going to put him back in the hospital, and he said, please don't. He said, I'm ready to go. And he had an understanding of a place that was beyond this life. Hebrews chapter 11 says that some of these people that live by faith, including Abraham, that we talked about a few weeks ago, said they longed for a city, or longed for a country that was not their own, and a city that had foundations. Something that was permanent, something that was lasting. So we have all these different ways of looking at home. So for our purposes tonight, I'm going to throw out a working definition. And this side of death, I'm going to define home this way. And this is going to be on the screen, but there's a little note on your outline. If you want to jot this down, just so you can kind of have a starting point. Home provides the framework for your closest relationships. So some of you might be single, some might be married, you might live alone, you might be in a dormitory, you might be in an apartment or a condominium complex. You may have different contexts for home. Some of you are from blended families, or you're single parents. Whatever the fact is, everyone has an experience with family. And so when you think about the people that you most closely share life with, I would call that home for you. So as you think about that tonight, home is the place where you are no longer objective. Did you get that? I was having a conversation with a friend of mine, this is probably 5 years ago now, but we had gotten to be friends through the church, and he was actually somebody that was going through kind of a really brutal divorce at the time. A lot of tough times, and he had not been really connected with the church. He ended up calling my friend Grace over here, and she got this guy hooked up with me. And he started coming to this breakfast that we were doing for men, and he really, through a process of some other guys coming around him, his life started to turn around. He started to find hope. He really got a tight relationship with God again, kind of in his distant childhood somewhere back there. Really got back tight with God. And he and I started to become better friends. And I had initially been kind of his mentor and his pastor and his counselor and his coach and kind of his equipper that connected with some of these other people. And as we grew in our friendship, we got to a point, and I actually sat him down one day, and I said to him, I said, I want you to know that you're going to lose something. And he was like, well, what's that? I said, you're going to lose me as your pastor. Because I will not be able to be this objective coach and counselor and pastor, shepherd kind of a guy over here who's totally objective with you and can just bring this good word to you all the time. I said, we're going to the point where I'm just going to be your friend. And it's going to be different. I think it's going to be better because there's going to be this give and take. But I'm not going to be this objective person anymore. But we're going to give and receive in our lives. And fast forward now, he got married again. They got a couple of great little kids. Very involved in faith, and just has got a great relationship with God now. But our friendship to this day is just awesome. But when you get into this context called home, you are no longer just the person that can turn it on, turn it off, that can be seen for being just kind of this person on a pedestal. You are at both your best and your very worst, and that's what home is all about. Psychologists tell us that everyone has a need to love and to be loved, to know and to be known, and home is kind of the place where that happens. I'm building a climb wall in my basement. Now, I know it's a little bit strange, but this is something that I've mentioned kind of in passing before, but some people have asked me about this, and they say, I don't quite get the fact that you're building a climbing wall in your basement. I mean, I can't just picture it. Well, actually what we're doing is we're building a bouldering area, but I knew if I said we're building a bouldering area that would not make any sense. So I need to just take a couple more minutes to explain that. Bouldering is just kind of climbing this low to the ground. You don't use ropes or anything, but there are a series, usually you start out sitting down on the ground or almost lying on the ground, and then there's a series of more technical moves to get to a point, and then you just jump back down again. And so we're building this bouldering area, and the first thing you need to do is you need a framework. And that's kind of what this is, and here's some of the guys who are kind of doing this. Now, we lost some people along the way that just wanted to climb, and they weren't interested in doing a framework, a structure, whatever. But we're putting all these 2x8s here. And climbers need what's called a bomb-proof structure. That means it's not going to, creak or groan or sway while you're hanging on it. Certainly hopefully not fly on top of you. So there's a framework that's required for climbing, and then even when you get to the next level, which is putting this skin on top of that, if we can go to the next picture, please, even that has structure to it. And in each piece of plywood, this one was used, there are 72 holes that you got to drill, and then each one of those has a threaded T-nut that goes into it and gets glued, and then those get fastened to the framework, and then finally you can get to the point where you're actually climbing on it. This is my friend Mark. He can't actually climb. He just pretends like he can. He's just posing. But then you get to the recreational climbing. Now, I want to say to you that it is the same in your relationships. Relationships, when we talk about time spent, it requires a framework. And the problem is a lot of people just want to jump into the recreation of relationships. And I talk to people all the time and I say, well, I just want to be happy so when we get married, or I want to be happy so when we move in with this person. And I would suggest that maybe that's playing house, but that in relationships that there's a certain structure or framework that is required in order for that happiness or that joy or that recreation to take place. And sometimes it's hard work. And that's where we want to just use this passage that Brian read a few minutes ago from 1 John chapter 4. I'm going to invite you to open up to that section tonight. It's almost the very end of the Bible. If you go to the very back of the Bible, Revelation, and just back up from there, and if you find 1 John chapter 4. And I want to suggest to you tonight that love is really the framework for those relationships. We do things like we make commitments to friends. We establish covenants, vows of marriage that provide a framework of some sort so that family can exist. And again, regardless of your context, there is a certain framework that's required there, and I think this section kind of breaks that apart a little bit for us tonight. Now, this section has the word love in it 13 times in one paragraph. If you count the word, sometimes translated dear friends, other translations it's beloved. All right, beloved, let us love one another. Is that right, Brian? Beloved as a noun. It's not loved. Yeah, all that stuff. We had this conversation a couple weeks ago, and Ryan and Brian, I had to finally stop and say, okay, enough of the beloved and blessed conversation. So can we have this academic discussion on when you would say ed versus did? All that. This is a beloved. If you count those two beloveds in here 15 times in one paragraph, do you think that qualifies as a theme? I would say, all right, for this paragraph. So here it is, love. Question. Why does God have to command us to love one another? That's the biggest question I have when I come to this little paragraph. He says, beloved or dear friends, let us love one another. Just right now, with the person next to you, the people at your table, just take 1 minute and try to answer that question. Why does God have to command us to love each other? All right, just talk about that for a